Welcome to the Geek podcast, where we are still catching up. We're catching up on all the non-gaming things. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host, Beej.
We're super geeky.
Yes, this is still true. Today, we're talking about, well, I already said, we're talking about all the things that we're catching up on from our, extended break, winter break type of stuff. And it seems like this time we kind of flipped from last time. I have more stuff than you for non-gaming, which is weird. We were just talking about this.
Yeah, it's really, really strange where usually you just burn through video games and I'm like, I'm going to read and watch everything. And then this year I was like, games. And you're like, stuff. So it was weird. Interesting, weird.
Yeah, I still played a bunch of games, but yes, you are correct. So we kind of structured this like we did last week. We have a bunch of quick hit stuff that we will fly through because, again, there were a lot of things here. So we kind of pre-talked, which we don't always do in an episode. And these are the things that we didn't really have a whole lot of back and forth to discuss. And then we have longer discussions down below. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go first? Because you have less. Okay, I'll fly through
these. You go on
first.
first.
So I watched a bunch of stuff. So I finished The Crown Season 2. It's still really good. Like I said on the episode where I dove in deep on it, I'm excited for Season 3. Kind of apprehensive of the actors changing over to new actors, but that's okay. We'll see what happens with it. The Horizon Zero Dawn no-clip documentary was really good. It was a great...
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, just like all the other no-clip documentaries, it was a great behind-the-scenes look at game development, and it was really interesting to see what they went through to get a first-person shooter engine change over to a third-person action RPG, engine.
Yeah.
Because as they were making the last Killzone, they were already planning their engine ahead for this game. So I don't know, it was just a really interesting look at iterative design and all this behind the scenes stuff.
That's really cool. I didn't realize that it was the same engine as Killzone.
Yeah, it's the same engine, it's the same team. So it's a fascinating look at how a studio can move from one type of genre to another one. I watched Dunkirk, which it's a good war movie, but it's definitely a war movie. So if you don't like war movies, if you're not in the mood for it, don't watch it. But if you are, it's a really good war movie. There are 3 timelines converging, which it took us a little bit to realize, and a lot of other people I've talked to said I didn't understand the movie at all, that nothing lined up. And it's about 3 timelines that are all kind of converging to one point. So as soon as you realize that, it's easy to see what's going on, but otherwise you're like, wait, why is it still day there and not a lot of time has passed, and this other one is at night now? That being said, it's like a movie that's full of atmospheric sound. There's almost no soundtrack to the movie, and it's an amazing filmmaking choice, I said, I can usually shut off my brain for storytelling narratives with TV and movies and stuff. And this was a film where I actually kind of stepped back and went, wow, that was a really cool filmmaking production standpoint choice to just use natural sounds and not have these sweeping epic soundtracks for most of it.
And I have no doubt that that's going to be a fantastic movie with Chris Nolan behind it. That it's just, there's no way that it's not, but it's not my kind of movie. So when I've seen any trailer, despite hearing literally nothing bad about it, I don't know if I will ever watch it unless Jennifer or somebody around me is like, hey, we're going to watch Dunkirk. And I'll be like, all right, that's fine. But I don't think I would ever seek it out just because that's not my genre of movie.
Yeah,
but I've
it's like
not
I said,
heard
it's a war
anything
movie.
bad.
No, it's good, but it's a war movie. You got to be in that mindset for it. I watched a little bit more DuckTales with my son. It's still good. I'm still enjoying it. I'm not rushing through to finish it. I'm just kind of waiting until whenever he wants to watch more, which has usually been over pizza. Whenever we order a pizza, he's like, let's watch another DuckTales. And I say, okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. There's Star Trek Discovery. So I watched episode 10 was the latest one. And I'm not going to spoil it because I know you haven't watched it yet, and a lot of people haven't caught up because 10 is very recent. But I hope this is the direction the series has actually been leading to, and this is the direction that they're going to go forward with. It also would help explain a lot about their level of technology and how it interacts with the timeline and the existing canon and stuff like that. If
you can go ahead and tell me if you don't want to avoid spoilers for the audience, but I don't know if I will watch this at any point within years. I have zero desire to see it right now, and that may change.
Okay, I will do 30 seconds worth of spoilers. So if you're listening and you don't want those, skip ahead 30 seconds. It is basically a mirror universe that they get trapped in, and it's like a dark look at a mirror universe, whereas in the past it's always been treated as like a joke and like a one-off episode. It seems like they might actually get stuck there for an extended period of time, and it might become a very serious thing, which is kind of interesting in our current climate.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be the direction they go, because that does sound pretty neat.
Yep. I checked out a couple Netflix originals, and some of them I bounced off of pretty quick, but there's a new David Letterman show where it's just him interviewing somebody for like an hour, and I always liked his interview skills. I never liked the late night trappings of, well, any late night show. Like, I hate
any of them.
I hate the comedy style of it, and like, oh, let's throw it to the band. Haha, that's funny. You have a guy that's there to laugh at you. Like, I'm not a fan of that. But Letterman himself is a really like amazing interviewer. And so Netflix gave him a show where he just interviews somebody for an hour. And the first episode is Barack Obama. It was awesome. Like, to, hear him interview President Obama was a great episode. So if that sounds even remotely interesting to you, go check it out. And I'm excited for the next episode, which isn't out yet, but I will keep an eye on it. That
sounds really awesome, because I hate late night comedy as well, just because of that kind of structure around it, that I like bits and pieces of it, but not the whole thing. And that's one of the reasons I really like Sarah Silverman's, I think it's I Love You America on Hulu, that she's doing something different with late night is what she says. And she even has the white guy in a suit behind a desk whenever things get too out of hand to throw it back to make people feel better. Like, it's really funny the way that they handle it there. So I like the way that people are moving away from the late night standard while trying to keep the good parts of it.
Yep, it's good. I like that. I also rewatched Westworld, and it was really interesting rewatching it with the knowledge that you get at the very end of the season. So I enjoyed it an entirely like different way this time.
Oh yeah,
whereas the first watch through, it's all about like piecing it together and what's happening and all these big questions about consciousness and really interesting stuff like that. The second watch through, it was actually so the first time I went through the season, I felt like the back half of the season was stronger because like all the narrative threads start to tie together. Enough clues are dropped that you can start putting things together, and then you get some answers by the end of the season.
Right.
This time, because I already had those answers, the first half of the season was actually much more interesting because I already knew a lot of stuff and I could identify what they were doing and where they were and like how all the different narrative threads tied together.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the second, like the back half of the season was less interesting because by then I felt like, okay, it's just going through the motions to get to the end of where it is. So it was a good experience to go through again, and I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah, which is a great way to actually structure a TV show like that, because a lot of times when you're putting things together like Lost or a TV show like that relies on kind of breadcrumbing people through, it's very hard to get that balance right. But them doing it like that, I'm really interested on how I think about it with them structuring it that way, where they've done it where it'll be different each time you watch it.
It was good. I'm excited for season 2 whenever it comes out, probably 2019, I think. I read a couple things. Well, in one way, I read a bunch, but I read Cobalt Squadron, which was like a tie-in for The Last Jedi. It was all right, I guess. I really wouldn't recommend that as a place to start with Star Wars books, but it's okay.
Okay.
I've told you, a lot of the Star Wars books are just okay. This one was definitely in that camp. I guess I'm reading, like with air quotes, the Oathbringer, the Cosmere novel. Normally, if I really get into a long book like this, I will read it, and then the Whisper Sync will hook up, and then I will listen to it, and I'll jump back and forth. But because this novel is so long, it breaks the download into 5 parts. And for some reason, the way that works with Whisper Sync is that it doesn't actually do Whisper Sync, which is really disappointing.
The Kindle app for that, or the Audible app to do Whisper Sync?
The Audible app.
You need to go into your settings, and you can still set it for one large download.
Oh, okay. I need to do that.
Because that's how I did Way of Kings.
Okay, so I've been listening to it, and I would like to also be reading it, but I'm not. But yeah, it's a good book, but it's long, and it's part of that fantasy epic, and it's Cosmere. I mean, it's all this stuff we've talked about before.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm about halfway through, so we'll have to talk whenever both of us get through that one. And then,
and I'm about halfway through Words of Radiance, so we're not that far apart on it.
Okay, and then the other thing I did was I read a bunch of comics. I picked up a month of Marvel Unlimited, and I read through the rest of the Vader 2015 run. I read through all the Star Wars to get caught up. I read through Poe Dameron and caught up on Silver Surfer. And I read a couple other things that I want to talk about in depth later, but I don't have a whole lot to say about those ones that I just ran through, which is fine. And then
did they finish Vader? You say the Vader 2015. Does that mean it's over?
So there's a 2017 or 2016 run. That's what I want to talk about later.
Okay. Fantastic.
And then I also listened to, besides Oathbringer, I also listened to Hardcore History Addendum, which is a new separate podcast feed for Hardcore History that's like all of the side thoughts or like side discussions, tangents, interviews, stuff like that doesn't really go into the main like epic, crazy length feed, where the episodes are like 3 to 6 hours usually. This is like a little half hour here or a little 45 minutes there. So it's cool. And if you like Hardcore History, you should check that one out. There's not a whole lot in there yet, but there will be over time. But yeah, those are all my quick hits.
Okay, so my quick hits are way smaller than yours on this one. For reading on Christmas, my wife got me the Gravity Falls Journal 3, where if you've seen the show, you know that Dipper finds this journal that someone left all these clues to why the town is all wacky and weird, and they've written it out, printed it up, and there's a hardcover version of it that you can just sit and read. So that has been just delightful for me because I still think Gravity Falls is like my favorite TV show. After I've just been kind of piecing my way through it as it sits on my couch, and I finally finished Way of Kings, the Cosmere book, the Brandon Sanderson one, and I'm into Words of Radiance now. I'm a good third to a half through it, so I'm really excited to get into Oathbringer because all of a sudden, just a couple of days ago, I hit that point in Words of Radiance where I'm like, oh yeah, this is what was happening, and I really, really want to plow through it. So I need to download it on the Audible app so that I can do Whisper Sync on it like I did Way of Kings some. I haven't been reading a whole lot other than that, but I moved in. We got Movie Pass, and a lot of the movies that we watched with Movie Pass are in my longer discussion, and I wanted to actually talk, though, about 3 of them that I've been watching. Was Pitch Perfect 3, and I loved the first Pitch Perfect. I didn't really care that much for the second one. It was ridiculous in a way I didn't necessarily think it was fun, but it wasn't memorable. And the third one decided to go full 21 Jump Street, jumping the shark, very aware of how dumb this is, and it went full on dumb in the best ways possible. That if you did not like 2 but liked 1, y'all need to go see Pitch Perfect 3 because it knows exactly what it is to finish this up with a bunch of 30-year-old women singing a cappella with the USO. It goes in really weird places. Since I've been running a lot more, I sit around, and while I've had a little bit of time, I rewatch Spirit of the Marathon 1 and 2. It's really good. I love those movies. I watch them every so often, even though I've never run a marathon. I don't really have any plans to run a full one. Maybe eventually, but when I'm 40 or something, I'll decide to do that to prove myself that I'm still alive. But they're just really good documentaries about runners, and they're about people, which is why I like them. I watched one, I think, by the same people who did those, called Boston, which is a look at the history of the Boston Marathon and leading up through the bombing and the recovery from that. It's new. It came out, I want to say, in December. I'm pretty sure it is brand new, and I ended up buying it on Amazon Instant just because I couldn't rent it. That it's really, really good. It's narrated by Matt Damon, and it just talks a lot. I learned a lot about the Boston Marathon and the history of it through watching it. And then one on Amazon Prime that was really, really cool was called Heart: From Flatline to Finish Line, and it's about triathletes who all have heart conditions, like people who have had to have open heart surgery or are in danger of heart attacks and going into cardiac arrest, and people who are doing these people do the Ironman triathlon. And it just talks about people with congenital heart defects, all of this, doing one of the most grueling, intense sporting events that there is, which an Ironman is I want to say a mile and a half, swim, 100-mile bike ride, and then a full marathon, and you have 17 hours to finish it. So these are people who have major heart issues and cardiac issues doing these races, and it was really, really, really good. I liked it, and there are people from 30 years old all the way up to like 70 that are doing this. Like it's super cool. But really, the rest of mine, I think that I had written down, I think I'm going to save till next week's Geekery because they're about video games, and this is not about video games. So that's all of my kind of quick hits. So
okay, cool. Let's do a quick dive into Geeky Offer of the Week. Let's do Audible. audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast. You can get a free book on us, and I suppose we could just recommend Way of Kings because you were just talking about it, and I was just talking about the third book in the series, and it's a good series, and the books are insanely long, so a really good way to get through them is to listen on Audible.
We do it, so you do it.
Yeah, so go to audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast and help the podcast and get a book at the same time, which is pretty sweet. I should also say all the other shows on the network are awesome. This week, Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea talked about The Greatest Showman in depth. Geektitude with Joe was about costumers for a cause, so it's kind of like cosplay, but kind of like the 501st and, like all those official groups out there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And I've met costumers for a cause, like the actual group, some of the people at conventions, like they're super nice people.
Yeah, so he talked to one of the people involved with the Minnesota chapter, which was really cool to hear since obviously I'm Minnesotan. And then the Comic Box with Rob, he talked all about he called it a Comic Geek's Guide to 2018. So he kind of highlighted all of the major things coming out that we already know about in 2018, from like comic book TV shows to movies to, just a little bit of everything. So that was a good overview. But yeah, all the shows on the network are always awesome. You guys should go listen if you don't already. Okay. Second half of our episode, which is longer discussions. So let's start with Blade Runner 2049 because we both watched it. What did you think?
Okay, I loved this movie. That there are definitely weak parts in it, but the way that I had it described to me before I saw it was that it was overly long. It takes itself way too seriously, but it is incredibly important. And I'm like, yep. That's kind of the way I feel about it. It's that's about a perfect description for me, that it is overly long, it takes itself way too seriously, and that I feel like it's important. Like I really, really loved this movie.
Okay. I mean, I liked it. I should preface it by saying that I have tried to watch the original Blade Runner probably 7 to 10 times. And I have tried every version that somebody has recommended. Oh, have you watched X version? Because there's so many out there. None of them. Like, I just cannot get through that movie. I either fall asleep or I get so insanely bored by how slow it is. And I don't think I've ever even made it to the halfway point.
It is a very hard movie to watch. And Blade Runner 2049, for those of you who are like you, I know you got through 2049, so that goes what I'm saying. It is a much better movie than the original Blade Runner. Like, I like Blade Runner, and we watched them we watched Blade Runner on Saturday and then watched Blade Runner 2049 the next night on Sunday. Blade Runner was pretty hard to get through. Like, I like the movie, but I don't love it, and I really think I love 2049.
Okay, I don't love it, but I'm glad that I watched 2049. It's kind of what I talked about the other week, where if there's a movie and it's well made and it's interesting and it's kind of more of a tone piece, I can watch it once. So this is a movie that I'm glad that I watched one time, and I kind of doubt I will ever give 3 hours of my life to this movie again because, man, it is a long movie and it is slowly paced.
And that's actually why I like it. I don't see, and where I get nitpicky on movies like this is where I'm like, it's not slowly paced, it's deliberately paced, where that's the way I feel about the first movie as well.
Slowly.
Yeah, I mean, it is like it's made to be slow, where it's not just a movie where they didn't know what they were doing. They made it to feel like this. And when I'm going in and knowing that, I can deal with it. But when I go in and it's just a badly paced movie, it's a completely different monster for me. And that's kind of what it is with the original Blade Runner, where because I know that Ridley Scott was doing this, I can watch it. But if I just kind of turned it on, like watching Dune, was it David Lynch? I can't remember. No, not David Lynch. Whoever it is, I don't remember who did Dune. Now my brain is just kind of exploding. Like I can't watch Dune because it's slowly paced, but not on purpose. It's just not well put together, if you ask me. It's the worst of 80s sci-fi pacing, and I think that Blade Runner is at least deliberate in that respect. And I think Blade Runner took that kind of atmosphere and tone, or 2049 took that atmosphere and tone that was set up with it, that was set up with it and moved it forward and put out a lot more interesting questions without nearly the questionable content and stuff from the first one, because there are some really ooky moments in the first one that I think the second one that weren't necessary, that I think the second one avoided without having to deal with. Like, okay. So 2049 didn't have them.
Like I said, I never even got through the first one. So, which is why I wanted to mention this, because I actually sat through it and I thought it was worth seeing once. Like, I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's like a be-all, end-all sci-fi thing like a lot of other people who watched it this year, but I did enjoy it as a sci-fi movie one time, knowing that it is slow and it took 3 hours of my life. So, keep that in mind.
And before we move on from this, I do want to say, like, I should have put in my quick links, my quick hits on this one, that I like this because it's my kind of sci-fi. It's that kind of dystopian cyberpunk, a cerebral sci-fi, that Philip K. Dick style of cerebral noir, really. And
how have you not watched Black Mirror?
We will get to that.
I know, I'm jumping ahead, but like you say that as one of your favorites. I can't believe you've avoided Black Mirror to this point.
Because the way that it was described to me was a kind of sci-fi Twilight Zone. Well, and I haven't been in the mood for for an anthology series like that, was specifically why I didn't want one-offs.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead because I have this in mind for later, but we're talking about it now. So Black Mirror is a show that's been very hit and miss with me. I watched all of the first season and I was like, yeah, that was worth it, even though there was some stuff in some of the episodes that was kind of like, we probably didn't need to go there, but whatever. I tried to watch season 2 and then I started skipping around episodes because there are just some episodes that didn't do anything for me. And that's kind of how I watched 2 and I think season 3, I only watched a couple of the episodes, and the other ones I watched 5 or 10 minutes of and said, nope, not for me. That being said, like the latest season just came out recently and I watched it in the last week, and there are 2 episodes in there that are really good. So there's the USS Callister, which is, it's kind of an MMO type of look. It's like a future tech thing where you put like a little tech dot thing on your temple, and then it can like take over your vision and like put you into a virtual space. So it's kind of about MMOs and like a space MMO that's really successful. And you get the impression it's probably a leading MMO out in the world. But then the other thing is like the lead programmer for it is obsessed with basically a placeholder for like the original series of Star Trek. And he has taken that and put they call it Space Team, but it's Star Trek. So he's putting like a Space Team mod on it on his personal console. And he... I don't want to add much more beyond that. It's a really interesting look at both MMOs and kind of like a creepy Star Trek guy. And it goes in a lot of very, very interesting places. So that one was good.
And I've heard that this one, the most recent one, as of this recording, I can't remember the name of it. Like I've heard a lot of people talking about it online, both in our Slack with everybody who's there in the Geek to Geek one, as well as just on Twitter, that apparently this week's was really good, wasn't it?
They released the season at a time. So
do they? Okay,
it? So like this is one of the ones that you've probably heard people talk about. The other one that's really good is Hang the DJ, and it's probably my favorite episode of Black Mirror so far out of all the seasons that are out. It is, I can tell the premise without spoiling a lot. It's basically like 2 people show up to this, like, it's kind of like an isolated resort type thing, and they have, it's not a cell phone, but it's like a little almost personal tablet type of thing that's their coach. They use this coach to, it's basically trying to find like their perfect match for a relationship. So you show up at this, big complex. It's not like a cult complex. It's just a giant area, that's designated for this. You go in and you have this little coach, and that's your only connection with like technology, basically. And you go wherever it says, and you like meet up with a person, and then you can both choose to like reveal how much time is left on the relationship. and it will count down. And whenever it hits the end of the time, you have to split up. So the thing is, the system's always watching you, and it learns like what worked in a relationship, what didn't work, all of your like micro expressions, and like how you feel about different situations and people. So it runs you through a bunch of different types of relationships to try to find your correct match in the end. So you have to agree to the process. But that being said, the end result is supposed to be like your perfect match, right?
That sounds really awesome.
So yeah, it's an interesting premise. And the episode starts out with two people who it's both of their like first day there, first night, they meet up and they get paired up for dinner, and they reveal how much time they have together. And it's like a day, or it's like 12 hours. It's like not a lot of time, but they like each other and they make like a connection, and then they have to split up. And then the rest of the episode is about like them jumping between all these other relationships, and they still see each other sometimes because the complex isn't like infinitely big. You run into other people that are there still searching for their match. So it's kind of about like love sometimes fighting back against the system, but how the system works, and does the system work, and should you like accept that and work within it, or should you push back against it? It opens up a lot of really interesting questions.
That sounds really neat. Like, I know I need to watch this show, and what I might do to start out with, because I've heard that, like you said, some of them are hit or miss, and that the beginning of it can start a little different than what the beginning of the series starts out a little different from where it's ended up now. That I might pick up like some of these that have just come out and like see about the USS Callister.
I would
see
recommend
how it works for me.
That approach. Yeah, you should grab the episodes that people like and are talking about, because there are a lot of episodes in there that you can kind of skip that aren't fantastic. But yeah,
and this is on Netflix, right?
It's on Netflix. Yep, it's a Netflix. I don't know if it's a Netflix original. It might be something else in the UK where it comes out, I think it's made in the UK and then it comes over here. I don't know, but it's on Netflix for us.
That's why I thought it was being released weekly, and then it just got put on seasons on Netflix. Okay.
Yeah, so Hang the DJ. Like, if you've never watched a Black Mirror before, I would suggest Hang the DJ or the USS Callister are both new, and they're both really good places to start. And I basically only gave you the first 10 minutes of each one out of like an hour or an hour and a half worth of show. So
okay. Yep. So there's shows like that. They're not like 45-minute episodes.
No, it's it's like a Netflix length, like a full 60 minutes, or I think the USS Callister is almost like a small movie length. It's probably like 70 or 80 minutes, maybe close to 90. Wow. Yeah, that's a long episode, but it's good. It's good. It's worth watching.
That's cool.
Yeah, but you watched a bunch of stuff, right? Do you want to talk about, or do you want to talk about what you listened to first?
Well, I'll talk about what I listened to first, because it's not a whole lot. Like I listened to the new Nintendo Power podcast because I was such a Nintendo Power kid that I lost my mind when I heard that the Nintendo Power podcast was coming out. So I wanted to make sure that I at least touched on it, because I'm so excited to have a Nintendo Power officially back that I don't care if it's very good or not, but I will listen to it because I've been a Nintendo Power reader since the first issue when I was a kid. That's somewhere in one of my boxes in my storage room or my mom's attic. I really can't remember where I put it. And yes, I realized that what that sounds like. It's like I'm that guy who has stuff stored, my video game stuff stored in my mom's attic. Is the first issue of Nintendo Power that have and beaten up so badly that when there was a new podcast, I just had to, and I loved it. And I love podcasts where they can get like developers and stuff like that on there. So I really loved it.
So and then I agree with a lot of the things you just said for me also, because I grew up with Nintendo Power. The thing I disagree with is I want it to be a good podcast. Like, I will listen because I was a Nintendo Power kid, but I need it to be good. And the first episode, it was a good enough premise. I just hope that they keep getting that behind the scenes access to developers. Like, that is the thing that could make them... Yeah, that's the one piece that could make them a podcast that rises above all of the other Nintendo podcasts out there right now. Whereas the first episode alone, because there's only one out, I was like, yeah, but I listened to like 3 other Nintendo podcasts because I'm subscribed to a bajillion podcasts. Like, you can do better. And I think they will. You just got to give them some time. It's been one episode.
Yeah, I mean, and the part that I really, really liked the most about it was that they had the Zelda developers.
Yes, that was the best part.
I love that kind of behind the scenes look. Like you said, that's why we watch these no clip documentaries and all of that. So if they can continue with that, I will continually listen to it. Where, there's a good chance I'll fall off if it's not, but if they keep doing that, I'll listen to it every month that they put it out, I guess, maybe. Who knows?
Sweet. Yeah, me too.
But other than that, I've listened to a lot of different Spotify running playlists. And I know that sounds weird, but with me running as much as I have been lately and really getting back into it, it, I realized I couldn't listen to podcasts. It was the Nintendo Power podcast that made me realize that I needed to listen to music while I ran, because it was just like usually I listen to podcasts or audiobooks, and right now I'm needing that up tempo, and even my normal playlist that I put together myself wasn't doing it. So I looked on Spotify, and they've got a lot of different playlists from a lot of different genres that are labeled specifically for a number of beats per minute, that it will say like rock 170 to 190 BPM. And I'm like, that is specifically what I need. And I've been listening to it, and it's like heavy metal like I like. So it's and some of it's really terrible heavy metal. Like there's a couple of Papa Roach songs in there thrown in with the Rammstein and Marilyn Manson, but it's for the most part, I really like it. So I'm very glad that they've put together and even labeled the BPM on their running playlist now.
Dude, that's sweet. I'm glad you found those. I might have to try those when I get back to running in the spring, but I'm very trapped in Minnesota winter at the moment.
Yes, you are. And I mean, they do have, and I haven't tried it again, they even have some that actually determine the speed of the playlist based on your cadence of running on your phone, like with the accelerometer, where no matter what you are, it's going to be able to keep you on pace with the music that it chooses. Like their smart playlists are really, really neat as well. So you should definitely try that out. So that's what I listen to. We've been watching a lot of stuff lately. You know, I mentioned that we went and bought Movie Pass, and I mean, there's Star Wars. We've watched. I've only seen Star Wars twice, though. Amazingly, at this point, I expected to see it 4 or 5 times, like I did The Force Awakens, but I've only seen it twice. Have you seen it anymore since we talked about it last?
No, but it's because of how I've talked about how impossible it is for me to actually get to the movies for stuff. Like,
yeah,
if I could actually go the amount I wanted to, I probably would have seen it like 5 times, but I've only seen it 2 at this point.
And I think actually what got me not to go more, and as much as I love the movie, I do think it was the length of the movie, because I haven't wanted to set aside that much time. So we went and saw Star Wars, love it. We went and saw Jumanji, and I absolutely adored Jumanji. And I'll tell you why. Like, I went in, and it is exactly the movie that you think it is. That whether that is good or bad, whatever you think it is that movie, if you have seen a trailer.
Yeah, I want to go to this movie and turn my brain off the same way that I do when I go to see Jurassic World, right? It's that kind of movie, right?
It is a popcorn movie. It does not take itself seriously. It is precisely the opposite of Blade Runner 2049, where you go in, this movie does not take itself seriously. This movie is goofy and silly and so much fun to watch that there's not any like hidden meaning in anything. It's just like, here are these kind of loser wiener kids getting turned into these weirdos in a video game. And it's like, that's awesome. It's The Rock being goofy. It's Karen Gillan being like a really fun actress, and it's just like Jack Black not being annoying and Kevin Hart being legitimately funny. It's like weird that I liked all of these characters, even though I don't particularly care for Kevin Hart or Jack Black, but they were endearing in this movie. And
yes, I want to see that.
It's based on a video game. Like, it's not, it's, let me phrase that a little differently. It is the premise of this, that instead of them getting sucked into a board game, they're getting sucked into a video game. And it's handled really well. That I gotta say, like, usually you watch something with a video game on screen, you roll your eyes if you're a gamer. It's like, oh, that's not how it would work. And it's because we're nerds and we all do that. And this one, it's like, oh yeah, that's how the map opens up. You're absolutely right. And so it was interesting to see stuff like that in a movie. And then like last night, I think it was last night, maybe it was the night before, I don't remember. We watched The Greatest Showman. I loved this movie. It was magnificent. Like, I think I loved it more than either of the people I went with. Like Jennifer and our friend Adam went to see it with me, and it was so good that the songs are both the best and weakest part of the movie, I think, where they were all just fantastic songs. They're so well put together. And I haven't listened to Katie and Chelsea's episode yet. I saw it came out this morning, and the songs aren't anything memorable. Like, they're all similar songs. They're really well written. They're really well put together, but none of them stuck in my head after the movie.
Okay, hang on. I have a thought about that because I've listened to the soundtrack. I haven't seen the movie. There's one song that I really like on the soundtrack, The Other Side, because it's a duet and it moves the plot ahead.
Yes.
But, like, I've listened to Hamilton a lot, and I know what, like, really good, like, theater music is, because I've listened to other musicals. Like, I enjoy a good musical. Listening to this soundtrack on its own, most of the songs are kind of, like, static in a way that's not actually moving the plot ahead. Like, I can tell that the movie probably did something to build up to this song, and then this song is a tone piece that doesn't actually do anything for the plot, and then after it wraps up, the next thing happens. Is that true? Is that accurate?
Pretty much, yeah. Where they use them as tone pieces, and they'll come back with snippets and reprises of those songs to really call back an emotion, but they don't really move the plot forward like you said. Some of them do, and that's really the weakest part of it. But the spectacle that they put along with it, that alongside the show, or I was looking at the notes and said showing alongside the songs themselves. The way that they stage it is just incredible. Like, they put together, like, the choreography is great. And more than anything, the cinematography in this movie is beautiful. That you want to talk about something being deliberately made, this movie is very deliberately made. And I sat there from both a craft perspective and a theater perspective with my background and just everything. I'm like, man, these people knew what they were doing. And I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, because I loved seeing how good the eye of the director and creative team were. That they really knew how to make this movie look magnificently spectacular. That the stylization, just the way that they moved people around on screen and blocked it all, was great. And so the songs just kind of added that and elevated it with the emotion from the songs. Like, I don't think I would have loved it as much if it were just a non-musical that was this well put together, but they put a good musical on top of fantastic cinematography, and I think that it really just upped the ante on it. That I love that part of it.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely want to see it at some point. I just don't know when. It'll happen eventually.
And then Jennifer and I have been rewatching Stranger Things. That I'm rewatching it, and she is watching it. That she never got into watching it the first time around. And did you ever watch season 2? I know that you've been kind of.
No, I think I got through 75% of the first season, and that's where I stopped because I was just bored.
And I don't. Okay, so I love season 1. Like, Jennifer got into it because her sister got into it, and like, she didn't listen to me, she listened to her sister, and she wanted something to have this to be able to talk to her sister about it when she found out that she loved it. And you want to watch this? And I'm like, yeah, I'll rewatch it, it's awesome. And it is, even going back, it's fantastic. I love rewatching it, and I'm having a really good time. And I don't understand the hate for season 2. That even my second time through it, I'm halfway through it again right now, and I do not understand why so many people hate on season 2 so much. That I've seen so many people say that it relies on nostalgia just way too much, and I don't understand how people say that. It's almost like the way that people don't like The Last Jedi for all of the things that I do. It's like, we can't be watching the exact same thing. That I really think Stranger Things 1 and 2 are both really well put together. So yeah, I'm enjoying rewatching it. Jennifer's loving it, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'll watch this. I'm happy about it. So
cool.
I'm excited to see whatever happens with season 3.
Yeah, I'm glad you still like it as a show, because I know you really liked it the first time through. So it's good when things hold up on second watch. And
it really does, where I'm still engaged and worried about these characters.
Okay, cool. I was going to ask you, have you watched the Doctor Who Christmas special, or do you plan to? Okay.
I don't really plan to. I know that I know most of what happens. I know, the new doctor and the new showrunner and the library Jennifer works at. She always does like a Doctor Who season premiere party. That's one of their, big events where people come out, dress up, bring their Daleks that they've made. So I may watch it there. I may watch the premiere, but I haven't seen anything. I've never even seen a Capaldi episode. So I'm just like, maybe eventually I'll go back to it, but I just haven't been interested lately.
Did you not even like give him a shot as a new doctor? Like you haven't even seen the start of his run?
I saw literally 10 minutes of the first episode of his season, and it wasn't that I didn't like it. It was just that I realized as it started that I did not care about watching Doctor Who right then, and I haven't been in the mood to watch it since, where it's not even him, it was just a specific Doctor Who in general. I haven't watched any of the old ones either.
Okay, well, maybe this is more of me talking at you and less of a discussion point then, but I watched the Doctor Who Christmas special because I always try to, especially when it's the Christmas special where a doctor changes over, because it's always kind of a reinvention of the show that's usually worth my time. Maybe not every Christmas special, but all of the ones where it switches from one doctor to another, I am glad that I have watched them, even if I didn't end up watching that doctor's run of the show. So, like I always try to make time for it. And this one was okay. I didn't think it was amazing, but I'm still glad that I've watched it so that now I have just that little bit of extra context for the next Doctor starting out.
Right.
And
when I go watch the next season, I'll absolutely watch this Christmas special. I mean, you're right. You have to.
Yeah, and like, I told you I didn't like Capaldi's run at all. Like, he just didn't work for me. I tried a couple episodes and I bounced off. But watching this got me excited for the new Doctor and got me excited for, like, the transformation and, the show reinventing itself like it always does. So after getting that little bit of excitement, I'm actually kind of tempted to go back to the Matt Smith run and watch the last couple episodes of David Tennant into the transition, the special that goes to Matt Smith, because Matt Smith is still my favorite Doctor, and just watch his run all the way through kind of casually on the side of what else I'm doing. Yeah. So I might end up doing that. I might.
That's a good idea. I mean, I think that's kind of how I would need to approach Doctor Who at this point, is kind of it being the sideshow that I watch whenever I want something on, because it's like I don't feel like I can get invested in it anymore. I don't know why. I think it's just my tastes have changed.
I have found, because I tried at one point to catch up on it, and I will burn out on Doctor Who if I try to mainline it. Whereas most of the reason that I'm able to get through the amount of shows and movies and books and games and all the stuff that I do, like you said, I usually come to Weekly Geekery with more than you. And one of the reasons is because I do one thing with my free time. Because if I don't budget my free time as a parent, it will just disappear. It'll go to social media and I don't know what to watch. I'll browse Netflix and try to find something. This is where my whole system that I work off of now with my free time came from, right? And that's the core of it, is I have to actually use my free time. Otherwise it's so easy to lose it as a parent. And there's something about Doctor Who that doesn't lend itself well to just sitting down and watching Doctor Who episode after episode. Whereas most of the other stuff I do, I can concentrate on that thing to the exclusion of all other side activities with my free time and be fine, whether it's a game or a book or a movie or whatever. But yeah, Doctor Who, after a couple episodes in a row, there's a sameness to it, even though every episode is kind of unique and different, but there's still, there's a formula to it that once you see it, it's kind of okay, I need a break from this. So I really do think if I go back to it, it will be casually a couple episodes at a time.
And when I watched it, I didn't do it have it week after or day after day after day. I was watching it when I went and visited my dad, and we would watch maybe 3 or 4 episodes a week, where we would be hanging out. Maybe sometimes it was 2, but we were just kind of hanging out and watching them on the night of the week that I went out there, where I would be able to come back and the next week and we would be watching them there. It wasn't going the next night and trying to get another 3 or 4 episodes episodes in, like a lot of the binging is now when we see it.
Yeah, and I think that probably helped you a lot. That probably makes a big difference to not try to, just binge this show. Because I don't think it lends itself as well to binging as a lot of other shows out there.
It doesn't. When Jennifer and I tried it, when I tried to get her to watch a lot of it, that may have been the problem, is that we were trying it night after night, and it just got tiring.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll report back if I do rewatch Matt Smith. Otherwise, I'm just going to wait for the new Doctor and be excited for that, because I am legitimately excited for it.
And I will likely watch the beginning of it and the Christmas special just to see, because I know Jennifer's going to have that premiere party.
Cool. So I also, like I mentioned earlier, I picked up a month of Marvel Unlimited, and there were a couple comics I wanted to talk about. So one was Vader, like you mentioned earlier. Right. So there's a Vader 2017 run, and it's not done, but the first arc of it is done. So I read the first arc and then like a couple more issues after that, like wherever Marvel Unlimited cut me off from 6 months ago, like it does. Yeah. It just stops whatever the current date is minus 6 months. That's how much you can get on Marvel Unlimited. So the first arc of the Vader 2017 run is really good, and it's about him getting his lightsaber. So it's actually like
nice,
back in time from right after he became Vader. So it doesn't pick up directly and tie in with the main Star Wars like the Vader 2015 run did, which is the one you read, right?
Yeah, I didn't read all of it, but I think I read up to Vader Down maybe.
So it was really interesting to get Anakin right after he turned into Vader, and to have him go through the process of having to get a Sith lightsaber because they changed the lore behind it. And
really,
that was the biggest thing for me that I got out of it, because you knew like the old lore, right? And I guess if you guys don't know, it was like the Sith would have to like build a forge and like channel Force energy into it, and like they would construct an artificial kyber crystal, whereas the Jedi would always go find an organic kyber crystal. That was kind of the old lore of things.
Which is why they were red, because it harnessed all of the anger and dark side in it, and they could never be any other color.
So they haven't actually got into the Sith lightsaber construction in the new canon ever since Disney took over. The Jedi canon stayed pretty much the same. They would have to go find it in the world, and it's kind of a test as a Force user. But for the Sith, they now have to go and steal a kyber crystal by defeating a Jedi. And then they have to channel like negative Force energy and like pain, anger and stuff into that kyber crystal until they can make it, because it's like a living entity now in a way that it wasn't in the old canon. They have to like make it, they call it making it bleed, but like basically make it in agony. And that's what turns it from whatever color it was before to red. So it's about Vader having to track down a Jedi after the Jedi purge happened, and then defeat him without having a lightsaber, and then stealing his crystal and like dominating the crystal until it's his own. It's a dark storyline, but it's a really good storyline. And it also has one of the really cool things in it is like when he goes to corrupt this kyber crystal, the kyber crystal shows him an alternate path that he could take as Vader to become redeemed and overthrow the Emperor and not become evil. Like it's his last chance, basically. It gives you like, I don't know, it's at least a couple pages. It might actually be more like half a comic where it shows you what would happen if he chose this. So it's like a really cool alternate history of what could have happened, didn't end up happening. So I can't speak for anything beyond that first arc of Vader 2017, but the first arc is really, really good, and I highly recommend it.
Wow, that does sound absolutely awesome. I'm sitting here listening to you talk about it, thinking, I bet they're going to do a Marvel Unlimited like free month or something for Black Panther in a few weeks. Like that's going to be a good time for me to read these Vader comics.
Probably. And I guess the other main thing I did with Marvel Unlimited was that Rob from the Comic Box, he gave me a reading list because I wanted to get caught up on Infinity Gems, Infinity War, like get ready for the movie that's coming up. And I read Thanos Quest, I read Infinity Gauntlet, and then I read the one that's just called Infinity. And between the three of those, you can see all the components that are going to go into the movie as it exists today. So they were good. I mean, I'm not going to rehash the entire plot of them, but Thanos Quest is about him going around collecting all of the Infinity. They're called Soul Gems, but then they like change the name mid-comic to Infinity Gem because it's a better name going forward for it, which is really funny to me. Like Thanos just like decides as he's questing for them, he's like, no, Infinity Gem. Like, I don't know. It's
Please
comics.
tell me it says that, because that's the kind of thing that they would actually do back whenever these were written.
Yeah, it's something like that. Like Thanos Quest and Infinity Gauntlet are like from 1990 and 1991 or something like that.
They're so hard to read. Like I've tried to go back and read part of Infinity Gauntlet and I couldn't. Like they're hard for me to read.
See, I got through them fine because they were self-contained runs and they were short. Like Thanos Quest is 3 issues and Infinity Gauntlet is 6, and then it's over. Like,
isn't there an Infinity Quest as well? Did you read it? Or am I getting that confused with Thanos Quest?
I don't know. I don't want to say for sure that there's not, but it's not one that Rob told me to read as part of what's going into the movie. And then the standalone Infinity was, I don't think they're going to take much from that in terms of plot. But
that's a new one.
But yeah,
it was 2011 for Infinity Quest. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Infinity is like 2013 or 2003 or something. I don't know. Sometime in the 2000s. I want to say 2003. I could be wrong. I should have written it down. This is me not taking good notes. But Infinity, I don't think the plot is going to tie in very much. But some of the like his enforcers from the trailer that are, the people that I'm assuming like he sends to Earth before him, that the heroes has to fight before they fight the big bad. I think all of those are directly going to be from Infinity, that run.
Like, what are they called? Like the Black Order or something?
They legitimately have like 3 different names in that comic. It's the Black something is their main one.
But where I can't remember their names, and the only reason I know anything about them is from Marvel Future Fight, is because they're all bosses that you can fight in it.
Oh, okay. Cool. So yeah, I read all of that, and I don't know. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I feel more prepared for Infinity War than I did before.
Okay, when you say you're more prepared, but does that mean you're more excited for it? Because I know that we've been kind of waffly on the MCU movies lately, where we like them, but we haven't been really gung-ho. Does this make you gung-ho for Infinity War more than you have been for others?
No. Well, okay, hang on. That's a multi-part question. It doesn't make me more excited than I was before I read these, but I am actually legitimately excited for Infinity War, the movie, which next week's topic, we're talking about what we're like actually excited for and anticipated in 2018. And Infinity War is like one of the few movies on my list because it is, we'll get into details next week, but it's the culmination of 10 years of movies at this point, and even if some of those are starting to feel formulaic, the fact that they are tying them all together and kind of putting a bow on it and starting an entirely new chapter after this and the follow-up movie means we're probably going to see a lot of actual character growth and like characters getting knocked out of the series in one way or another. So yeah, no, let's talk about that next week though, because I want to. But speaking of that, like I watched Thor Ragnarok finally. And it's my favorite Thor movie.
Yes.
I'm glad they made him an actual character and not just like a one-dimensional god hero like he always has been up until this point, I felt like anyway. And I like the humor in it. I don't know if I have a lot of other things to say, but I promised you I would tell you when I finished it in case you wanted to talk about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing I liked about it was exactly what you said. Like, I feel like my entire thing about the first Thor movies, the first 2 of them, were that they were not great movies and not great stories, but they were movies about people, about pretty people I liked doing funny and saying funny things. Like, that was what I liked about them. And this one took it beyond that, where I cared about the story that was being told. There was a lot more legit humor in it, and it was like they finally found how to tell a cosmic story with Guardians of the Galaxy, and then just kind of shifted that area of the MCU into that. And I liked Thor Ragnarok. I felt that Thor Ragnarok was a better Guardians of the Galaxy 2 than Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was. That I feel like it was more of a sequel. It was more of a sequel that wasn't that same kind of, I'm just doing the same kind of thing over again. It was an iteration on that again. Like we say something is iterative. This one feels to me like iterative design of the cosmic side of the MCU.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I liked it for that too. I'm excited to see the cosmic side of the MCU expand because it feels like they can do so much more to break out of this like typical superhero mode that a lot of the other movies seem to get stuck in.
And I'm really excited. I don't know if you saw, like, everybody, and I'm sure you did too, like really loved Valkyrie in this. Like, I'm a big Tessa Thompson fan now. And like I liked her in Westworld, and I really liked her character there, and I liked her in Veronica Mars as because I hated her in Veronica Mars. I liked her as an actress.
She is one of the main characters in Hang the DJ in Black Mirror.
Is she really?
Yes. So you should go watch that.
I really should then. Like, she's great. And that character of Valkyrie, they're bringing into the comics, the Thor Ragnarok version of Valkyrie specifically is joining the Exiles because they're a team that pulls from alternate dimensions. So they're bringing specifically this Valkyrie into the actual comics.
Oh, cool. I guess I kind of skipped over it when I was talking about Marvel Unlimited, but I also read Gwenpool, since you brought up comics again. Have you read any Gwenpool? Was my main question.
No.
It is fun. I like it.
I want to read it because I got to the second or third issue of Champions, and the last panel was her becoming a member of the Champions or trying to join, and I haven't read any more than that. But I want to.
I've never really connected with Deadpool, even though I liked the idea of him. I liked the movie, but I like the comic iteration. I've never actually liked the way they executed it as a comic.
Yes.
He just doesn't appeal to me. But this is the same fourth wall breaking thing, except she doesn't have any superpowers, it's just hilarious. Like, she ends up in the comic book world from our world, so her only power, if you could even call it that, is being very familiar with all of the Marvel comics because she's a big comic fan.
Seriously?
Yes, that is her power.
I did not know that.
So her power is knowing comics and also realizing that she is probably the protagonist of a comic that she's in right now, so she can't actually be killed. Like, those are the only two things that she legitimately has as her abilities, if they're even considered abilities. And it just takes that and runs with it.
That is way more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's really fun to read. Like, I don't know what to say about it besides that, except it's a great premise, and I liked every I liked every issue that I read.
All right, now you're selling me on Marvel Unlimited again, because that is not, because I haven't done any research. Like, I've seen Gwenpool, I've played with her in Future Fight, and it's like, okay, but that is the best way to sell me on that I've heard so far. That's great.
Yeah, it's really fun. And then the last thing I had for a longer discussion here is I read a book called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. And it is the most interesting book I've ever read about like video games or video game development. So it's a really cool book looking at the behind the scenes of game development, just like a lot of other things I've kind of been looking at lately. I highly recommend this to anyone interested in what goes into making a game, just like I recommend NoClip, but this is a great book for it. And it has, so one of the things here is that it has extremely current game examples. So the author is one of the, I can't remember if he's an editor or a writer for Kotaku, but he's been there for a while and he does really good reporting. So he used, his connections and his skills and, being in the industry for however long he has been to go and talk to a ton of developers from like the big name studios on games you actually know from the last 10-ish years. So chapter by chapter, outside of the intro and the outro, is just game by game. And like one interesting thing or a couple interesting things that happened in the creation of that game and how like the development like went wrong or there was a wrench thrown into it or, like if you've never done software developer, there's always something that comes up that you didn't plan that causes problems. And because of the nature of video games, it's that taken to the extreme. That always happens. Like the fact that any software ever gets shipped is kind of a miracle that you don't understand until you're a developer. I mean, it is, right? You're a developer, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many moving parts. Like it's insane.
It is. So the games that this book covers are Stardew Valley, Diablo 3, Destiny, The Witcher 3, Halo Wars, Pillars of Eternity, Dragon Age Inquisition, Shovel Knight, Uncharted 4, and Star Wars 1313. So, it's a really, really good book for all of those. Without getting into, like, all the details of any one of those, some of the stories made me change my opinion on developers, which was very interesting for me, I suppose. So, I kind of respect Bungie a lot less now that I understand, like, what they're kind of like behind the scenes and the way they treat business and their properties and stuff like that. I have a lot less respect for Bungie than I did before. And then on the other side of the coin, I have a whole new appreciation for the Dragon Age team at BioWare. Like, I did not click with Inquisition at all. I tried. I really tried. I probably put 30 hours into that game before I gave up on it. And I hated it by the time I gave up because I was forcing myself to try to like it, right? By the time I was done, I was like, oh, I hate this game, even though I could probably go back to it now and appreciate it in a different way. But
yeah,
you know, with Inquisition, it was kind of like, maybe I'm done with Dragon Age at this point. Maybe I won't ever come back. After reading this book, reading it was enough to sell me on the next Dragon Age game, sight unseen, because reading what they had to do, they basically redeveloped the Frostbite engine and all of their tools to make this game, because that engine was made for first-person shooters, and it didn't have anything for third-person support or RPG or quests or like anything that would go into an actual RPG third-person game that they made. They developed almost all of it except for like the graphics from scratch, and they still made this game come out. Like it's unbelievable.
Like, okay, so I'm not familiar with the actual behind the scenes of this, like the production of Inquisition. Like, I bounced off of it like you did. I probably put in 3 or 4 hours and legitimately hated the controls and camera and stuff like that, and kind of UI altogether, which makes a lot more sense with that. So why did they run with Frostbite? Were they told from above they had to?
Yes. So this is also, if you guys don't know, the reason that Mass Effect Andromeda is the way it is, because they were still dealing with these same problems. Like, this and Mass Effect Andromeda are the first 2 RPGs that were made on Frostbite. And it's because EA decided at some point before Inquisition started development that everybody who works for EA from now on is going to develop on the same tool set, and it's going to be the Frostbite engine. And it is an engine that is amazing for first-person shooters. Just take a look at Battlefront 2. Like, the graphics in that are just stellar.
Brilliant.
They're brilliant. They knock you out of the park. But outside of graphics, like, it wasn't made for anything outside of first-person shooters. So now every other EA studio that has been mandated to use this has to, like, create tools from scratch. Even if they had something that had worked for 10 years previously, they can't use it anymore. All of that to say that I now have a lot more respect for the RPG teams at BioWare, and I feel bad for them that they were given this mandate that messed up 2 games now.
So tell me about Bungie. I mean, I know we try to avoid like negativity a lot, but I'm really curious on what makes you respect Bungie less now, because I didn't think that you had a lot of respect for them. I thought that it was more along the lines of Bungie is Bungie and they're kind of there, but what like to actually go below that makes me really curious on what happened here, because I'm going to read this book, obviously. Like, this sounds fantastic. Like, this sounds awesome, but I'm really curious about Bungie now.
So it's not any one thing they did. It's more, I've been in like the corporate world for long enough now that I can read between the lines when people give quotes about like kind of what's happening behind the scenes. And they just lack direction. Like, they got their own property and they just didn't know what to do with it. Like, they were given the freedom to do anything, and they had all of these grand ideas, and they had a bunch of leaders that they could have said, yes, take this and run with it. And instead, they basically remade Halo and they called it Destiny. Like, and I know this because like I like Destiny as a shooter, right? It's a really solid first-person shooter, but it's an evolution of Halo. It is a direct evolution from the Halo games they made before it. And they were given all of this freedom, the ability to do anything they want. And the first thing they did when they became an independent studio from Microsoft was they turned around and signed a 10-year deal with Activision that locked them into basically remaking Halo and calling it Destiny. And because of the release schedule they agreed to for Destiny, it's caused all sorts of problems. Like, you remember when Destiny came out and they had pulled the entire story and they scrapped it all in Destiny 1, and then they had to re-knit it back together in a way that kind of half made sense, but there was never any time to explain what they couldn't explain. Like, that is why Destiny 1 is the way that it is, because of their bad business practices and bad project management, basically. And as somebody who has lived through bad project development as a software developer, that makes me rage in a way that few other things do. I feel so bad for the teams that had to work on those games and then put out a subpar product because they had signed a deal that they had to launch by this day, you know? And like,
just knowing
Destiny,
what I know about video game development, that hurts me. Like, and I'm not even involved in it, but putting a hard date on it just makes my soul ache.
Well, and the thing is, like, this one, it wasn't even about Destiny 2, but it started at, like, kind of accidentally talking about it anyway because it discussed the nature of the deal with Activision. And you could tell that the exact same thing was in the process of happening with Destiny 2, which probably explains why Destiny 2 didn't land as big as they wanted it to, or that people thought it would. Like, I think Destiny and Destiny 2 both have the ability to become amazing games, but they each needed probably another year of development. And
yeah, I could see that.
Like, they just weren't given that. And then a lot of the other things with, like, having a story in place and picking a direction, and then at, the very last hour deciding, oh, we're going to do totally something different. Like, that doesn't work in software development. That's how you ruin entire projects. So stuff like that. I mean, you should read it and let me know what you think. Maybe I'm reading between the lines where I shouldn't be, but that's the impression I get.
No, and that makes sense, though. I mean, because they've just even the stuff that gets publicized from Bungie and around these games seems like a hot mess. That there's just everything that's happened since like 2002 with Bungie has been kind of a mess.
Yeah, and some of it is like attitude also, especially after reading 10 developers back to back and hearing all their different approaches and philosophies and attitudes. Some of them are like a small family, the Shovel Knight. The Shovel Knight people love their game and they love working together and they're doing what they want to do, even though they were offered to be bought out a bunch of times. They're like, no, we want to make the games we want to make with our small group, and that's all we want. Bungie is a bunch of dude bros that got really successful and didn't know what to do with it. And
that's true.
I feel bad saying that, but it's like, yeah, that's kind of what it is,
I would also like to point out, as a way of kind of ending the podcast, these two super geekery episodes that have been opposite of everything else, that you have landed on how I buy video games after reading this book. That you don't want to support Bungie as much because of the way the developers are, and you will buy Dragon Age sight unseen because you like the team, and you have made fun of me for that in the past.
No, because I'll buy Destiny 3. Like, just because I respect them less. Like, I don't know, if the game is good enough, I'll buy it. But, it's not necessarily the people behind it that convinced me one way or another. It's like what I know now about the engine and the development cycle that, they got their feet taken out from under them, which is why Dragon Age Inquisition is the way it is. Give them more years on a project and they can probably do much better.
That's very true.
Yeah, so it's not like the people, because I legitimately couldn't tell you the name of a single person that works at either of those companies, and I don't care to. Like, whatever. So and not exactly like you.
I'm excited to see what comes of the next Dragon Age game then, because Inquisition was really the first one that I'd ever tried to play, because my 360 red ringed right when I had Origins, and so I just kind of missed it because of circumstance, and I never played it on PC or anything, even though I have it because it came really late, and I decided to try Inquisition and bounced off for all those reasons. So maybe Inquisition 2 or whatever they'll call it will be the one to get me.
Very possibly. Okay, next week, guys, we're going to be hopefully back to our normal topic structure type of thing, and maybe we'll actually hit that new 45-minute goal, which did not happen tonight, and it's totally fine. We had a lot to talk about these last 2 weeks, though. So we're going to talk about our most anticipated everything of 2018 next week, which is something we thought would be fun just because we didn't do it last year, and I kind of regret it, because we couldn't look back at the end of the year and say, what were we excited for? What were we right about? What were we wrong about? And it's still early enough because legitimately nothing has come out because it's January. So that's next week's topic to look forward to. That being said, you can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And if you're on Slack all day like we are, you can go to slack.geek2geekcast.com for an invite and talk to us. And we are part of a podcast network, and you can go to geek2geekcast.com to see if any of our shows tickle your fancy.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's. And I'm now vlogging my way to a Star Wars-themed half marathon at runningshoes.tv.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, geeky beakies.
Comics. Hey everyone, Rob here, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, inviting you to join me and my rotating cast of co-hosts each week on The Comic Box, where we tell you everything you need to know to become a world-class comic book geek. So join us for The Comic Box each week right here on the Geek to Geek Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we're the hosts of the podcast
Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea.
We are two best friends who love pop culture. We try to have a female perspective on things, but we really just talk about anything we like. What are some recent topics we've done, Katie?
Well, we've talked about girl power songs, Wonder Woman, Veronica Mars, young adult fiction novels, San Diego Comic-Con, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher and start listening today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.